What's up, peeps? Welcome back to my channel. I'm Jen, and you've made it over to Copper Cactus DIY, where I share furniture art, faux finishing, and decorative painting. And this is way too formal for my challenge. Beach Please! Welcome to Beach Please! Yes, it's our challenge week. I am so excited. So if you are here and you are joining this challenge, please say hello down in the comments as soon as you possibly can, because I can't wait to know who is here. If you're here during the premiere, then also make sure you leave a comment below. Yes, all of this is getting used in this challenge piece right now. I am using this wicker white from Folk Art. It's a matte finish, and I want to use this instead of the melange paint because the melange paint has a built-in top coat, and in order for the decoupaging to seat right, I want to make sure that it has some tooth. So this matte finish is going to work perfectly for that, and I'm going to be using this anywhere I'm using this. But let's not get too ahead of things here. Before I could do any of that fun stuff, I had to vacuum out any food particles. Unfortunately, our good upstairs vacuum wasn't really working, so I switched to a dustpan and broom. I flipped the piece onto its back to remove the hinges, but when I got to removing the hardware... Okay, let's talk about this really quick. Hang on. When I take off this hardware, the screw is exposed. You can see how pointy that is. So it's just your standard drywall screw. This is not hardware, typical used for hardware. This knob is just wood, and they just screwed right into it. That is barely underneath the cap of this hardware. So I'm changing all of this out anyway. I'm using something super cool and super beachy, and so I'm gonna have to get this screw out. Once I get these out entirely, I am going to do a full clean, and let me show you why on this one really quickly. We did actually use this for the entirety of its life pretty much as a trash can, and that is just grimy nastiness. The other side was recyclables. We washed those before we put them in, so that side wasn't as bad. Speaking of cleaning, you hear that? If you can hear that, that is Mr. CC DIY out in the garage, because we actually just found out that our next door neighbors moved, and so I have a few weeks to actually park my car in the driveway, and I'm going to definitely do that. And yeah, okay, moving on, because literally this is boring as hell and nobody wants to see this part. They want to see the cool stuff. Nobody wants to see this part. This is boring as hell. Before cleaning, I thought it would be smart to try to fix one of the issues with this piece. Unfortunately, the top of this is potato chipping, aka it's curling upward, and that's happening at the front edge. That front, like, stringer piece, what's that called? Anyway, that's only attached to the top piece, not the sides. So I tried to glue it to the sides, and this glue worked okay on one side, but it did quickly pop off on the other side because the curl on that top is just way too much. You know what? I am fully going with it. Humidity along the shore is a beach on furniture anyway. I unclamped after about 2 hours and started cleaning using dish soap and water. As soon as I finished that, I heard one side pop, so I reclamped. To finish cleaning, I switched to vinegar for the areas with food or any nastiness. I won't wash that off. I let it soak in completely and then dry completely. Using damp plastic wood and a Japan scraper to smooth things out, I filled in all the holes from hardware, hinges, and any nails from the manufacturer that hadn't been covered. to hear the best news ever? Check it out. Yep, one of our vehicles, we have two, and I'm sorry for this echo, has been moved out of the garage because I finally get to workshop in here a little bit. So I told myself that before the next time I used a power sander inside, like in a workshop or a garage or something, that I would get myself some hearing protection. So I thought about it and I'm like, don't I have something? I came out here to the garage and this is what I found. Just these disposable earplugs. So I have probably, 48 pairs of these left now. I tested a pair just to see and they do not work for me. But I have an idea for what I'm going to do with these because I don't want to just throw them out and you can't like take them back. They're open. And I have just so many of them in here. I've got a cool idea for what I can actually use these for, but you're going to have to subscribe so you can be here for the Eco Challenge, which is dropping in October. More information on that coming up in the next couple videos, but I feel like these are going to make an appearance there, so you're definitely going to want to get subscribed. I wrapped up my first workshop day in a while by vacuuming. That's my second least favorite noisy thing to do in the workshop, second to sanding of course, but it's still in the workshop so I wasn't complaining. However, I went to edit this video and at the end of the day I was reminded I'm an old beach. Yeah, I got a somewhat late start the next morning, but I started out using a clear liquid shellac to coat as much of this cabinet as possible. This is actually my least favorite form of shellac, and I always try to remember to mask up and wear gloves when I use it. It reeks, but it works to help contain odor, tannins in the wood to prevent bleed through, and generally seal the wood. I went very generously on the raw wood, which soaked it up well. Thankfully, the smell usually fades once it's dry, but if anything lingers, it'll be contained by one of the many layers I still have planned. Hang tight for more on that. For the door and drawer fronts, I sprayed 2 coats of shellac, which is my preferred method. I waited about an hour between each, and in between each, I used a 220 grit to give it a light scuff sand. Then I left it to dry overnight. Oh yeah. Yowza. I'm gonna have to kind of scream, I'm sorry, but this is my air quality right now. This is an air purifier and I decided to just bring it out here for a couple hours and it's been running for about an hour so far. However, these pieces are drying down really, really nice. Tomorrow, I'm gonna kind of maybe do more than I probably need to now, but I'm using bin on the inside of the cabinet, inside of both drawers, and inside of these cabinet door face thingies, because I'm doing a fun color on the inside and the bin that I have is gray. So that's going to help further block out any stains, tannins, bleed through, anything like that, odor, whatever, and it's going to help me get a good base color so that I can get my fun color on. But this color is actually a good indicator of what that color is probably going to be. In a little while, I will open doors in here in this garage, but I at least wanted these to start drying down so that bugs didn't fly at it. I guess that's it. I'm off to edit, and peace out, beaches. I skipped the pain meds the next morning and got right to work. Like I said, I'm using gray so I can get an even color for underneath my fun color application. Between the number of surfaces to paint and the dry time, this actually took me a couple of hours to finish. I got everything completed off camera, and again, I left everything to dry overnight. So why don't you all just enjoy some island jams while I ride this gray primer wave? With the primer dried overnight, I got painting the next day with this apple barrel acrylic in the color bright red, and boy is it ever. Normally I wouldn't use a craft style acrylic paint for the inside of a cabinet drawer, especially one that might see a lot of use, but this cabinet won't be used as heavily anymore, and I plan to top coat it with a few coats anyway, so that should hold up well enough and be protected good enough for my needs. Here we go. Oh, baby. Between taping off and painting, the first drawer took me about 5 minutes. Everything else took about 25 minutes, but I sped that up significantly for you here. I finished and left it to dry for a few hours. Change of plan. This is not going to be red. I sat here and I was doing this, and I mean, hi, how cool does that look? I'm so excited about it, but it's a lot. And yes, the two doors will be hidden by cans, most likely, trash cans of some sort. But I think it was just going to be too much with all of that on the inside, and then to have all of this on the inside be red too. So I'm refocusing. I also have some other black stuff, so I'm just going to use my favorite chalkboard paint, a roller, and just cut it in with the same brush I used for the red because it's already kind of ruined and destroyed. So yeah, I'm going to do that. And then once that's done, I actually think the red is going to be dry enough that I can do a second coat on that today and get that complete because it's only going to need 2. Same with the inside of this. I will do 2 coats. I'm kind of, again, glad that I did this in gray because it really is helping to hide everything with the black. So yeah, anyway, I'm getting on this now. With coat 1 of the black done, I left that to dry overnight and went back to finish up the red, coat 2, but I did that off camera and then I called it a night. Actually, I called it a long weekend. Me and Mr. CCDIY took a few days away and we cruised on out to the east coast of the United States. We saw family and the beach. Razor clam. After my salt air revival, I came back to the studio totally stoked to get back to work on this piece. I used this all-in-one paint from Melange. It's called One, and I gave this a gorgeous satin finish on the main cabinet, the cabinet face, the drawer faces, and the edges of the door face only. Like I said earlier, I had a different paint for everywhere that I planned to add decoupage. For the decoupaged areas, I'm using Faux acrylic in wicker white. It went on exactly how I hoped. There's a slight texture because the paint is super thick, and I used a brush to apply it that way because it's just what I'm going for. I want it to look like you grabbed the brush and that old can of paint from down the basement and slapped on a coat or two during your week stay at your beach cottage. Imperfect, beachy, but totally freshened up. I did 2 coats of this, and then sadly I noticed an issue happening with the melange paint while I was painting. Let's talk an issue. You see this broken look to the paint here? That's because something was on the surface that repelled the paint. This is the melange one, and it has a top coat built in, so if there's anything underneath that's like an oil or something shiny or something like that, it's going to repel. My guess is I either got some glue from when I did this part, or I got some top coat from when I sprayed the underside of these where it's red. There's one other spot, one of these drawer fronts as well, it's happening too. So I did a little test. There was a spot also on here up in this area. I did a little test, or no, actually I think it was over here, with the folk art over it, and it doesn't seem to be repelling. I don't know if that's gonna hold or not. I'll do some scratch tests after all of this dries and I'll let you know. But if it doesn't, then you'll probably see me in the next clip just putting that folk art wicker white on like literally everything that is not red because then that way I just have a really good base. Unfortunately, I just don't think this was the right project for melange, and it was so old, I just don't think it was in the best shape anymore. So we'll see. If you're watching the next clip of me doing the folk art paint, then yeah, you probably already know what happened. I added black wax to the rails so the drawers will slide easier. After a couple minutes, I buffed it in with a dry microfiber cloth, and I use a makeup brush to apply most of my decorative waxes. I find the bristles are soft and they hold product really well. On the drawer sides, I wanted a kitschy surprise that you'll only see when the drawers are open, which is good because I messed up big time, which you'll see in the beauty shots, so stick around. To start, I tried cutting the sheet, but whole sheets seem to work better in the end. I did just this one on camera, the other 3 sides off camera, and left them to dry for a little while. For hardware, I have these heavyweight metal hooks in a mermaid tail shape. The color didn't work, so I scuffed them to give them a tooth on the surface. I wiped them down clean, then sprayed with a pearl metallic. Sadly, the teal was just still too prominent, but I left it to dry and I went back to the drawers. They were slightly tacky still, so I used a hairdryer on the cool setting. That can help speed up dry time, but also avoid cracking that heat drying can sometimes cause. Once they felt dry to the touch, I removed the excess paper at the edges. Considering this was tissue paper and how easily it dragged and split while I was applying it, let me tell you, the excess took way more effort than expected to remove. The next day, I put a much better base color on the hardware. Then I could finally start the faux wood grain. I'm going for a heavily distressed, old, weathered wood vibe. Here's an example. I recently snapped this picture while I was on a walk. It's a boardwalk over water, and it's exactly the level of distressing that I'm trying to achieve on this piece. And I studied this photo for way too long, but that helped me to figure out tones for my glaze coats, patterns in the undergraining, and which order that I need to apply my layers in, not to mention how many processes this finish would be. I know this first coat looks a bit stark for sure, but as I always say with faux finishing, trust the process and make a sample board. This coat took me about a half an hour, and I left it to dry for the night. And while that dried, I gloved up and gave a healthy coat of Howard feed and wax to the drawer backs and undersides. Then I was done for the night. My next glaze coat is used to tone the undergraining plus leave some faint grain lines of its own. I used a 2-inch straight cut purdy to apply this coat, and I made sure to go really heavy with the glaze. All of these colors are custom mixed, so I'm sorry that I can't give exact measurements here, but this is about a 4-to-1 ratio of glaze to paint or tint. I made sure this coat was following the grain pattern that I set up with the gray undergraining, and something to keep in mind if you try this, nothing about faux is fast because of the dry and cure time between layers. I actually like to leave my glaze coats to dry overnight, so I have less risk of lifting up any of the lower layers when I'm applying my next coat. Hey, that's just more time for video edits, right? The next morning, I added a definition color. This is about a 50-50 mix of glaze to tint. And remember, trust the process because this is gonna look very purple for a minute. I hand painted this entire layer so that it flows well with the grain that's left behind by the graining tool. I want this layer to be darker than that one though, since this is going to establish my darkest weathered areas other than the cracks. But that's coming up in a minute. First, let's get into a bit of real-time action on this layer. That way you can see a bit of my process. It's not fast, or for those in a rush, that's for sure, but I think you'll enjoy it. This tiny little section here that I just did in high speed took me 19 minutes to finish, so it's gonna probably take me about an hour to do the whole top, and I don't think anyone needs to see all of that. So I'm just gonna do a little bit on camera now, and you can get a feel for how long it actually takes to do something like this third layer. That was about 2 minutes. In fact, this whole section took about 10, but I'll speed through the rest of this for you. And because this whole piece has become a little extra, I rode that extra wave all the way through the hardware. I used purple, orange, and navy acrylic paints to add detail on a few scales of each mermaid tail. Plus, I put purple on one and orange on the other to add extra whimsy to the ends of the tails. It took about 3 coats with a hairdryer on cool in between each coat to get full coverage. Once I had that, I pounced a pearl acrylic over the whole surface. At the ends of the tails, the purple and orange faded a little, so I added some of each of those colors into the pearl paint for a second coat, and that turned out much nicer. I left everything to dry overnight. Back to the top. The next coat is a toning glaze. I custom mixed a green undertone greigey color, which will help to dull the purple and further flatten out that original gray grain. I added visual breaks in the glaze where I had established certain areas with the hand painting, and once again, dry time thwarts my progress here, but I did the hinges in the meantime, so how about a hinge montage? Other than assembly and some top coat, my final steps were to paint in cracks and splits in the wood grain. This is the part where I needed another round of heating pad and pain meds. Hunching over like Quasimodo for as long as it took to do this isn't in my best middle-aged interest, but I'm gonna let this roll in time lapse with a little music because it took me forever. So long, in fact, that my camera battery died at about an hour, and you will see that I still have plenty more to go. But this is the good stuff, right? I hope you enjoy. we need to talk. I hate it. I literally hate it. It looks like a cartoon version of weathered wood, and I kind of knew it was happening when it was happening, but I just couldn't stop myself from completing it just to see, because sometimes with faux, it's like you have to get through the whole thing in order to see the collective. I knew that wasn't going to be the case, and yet I kept doing it anyway. I hate it so much. This is not what I was going for. So I'm going to go for something else. But in order to do that, I need to legitimately just eliminate this from my life now. So I guess that's what you're going to see next. Here we go. So I took some sandpaper and all my aggressions out on this piece. Funny, I didn't loathe it as much once I sanded it back. It looked a lot better, but it still needed some kind of toning coat. So I applied a very generous coat of folk art wood tint in the color gray. It's kind of more of a khaki tone, and that toned perfectly. Well, as we say in the writing world, sometimes the only way to make things work is to just kill your darlings. To say I like this better is a gross understatement. I think this is so much less cartoony, and it's still a little cartoony, and it's definitely not how I will do this in the future as far as like the stacking order of my layers, but I am so much more pleased with this. I cannot begin to tell you. It looks so much better. The knots are good. I'm going to definitely still come in with the black pen just to do maybe the black and brown pen to do a little definition on those cracks around the knots. But other than that, this puppy is done, and I am ready to just pull some tape and start some base top coat. Woot woot! I won't bore you with a top coat montage. I used either flat, matte, or dead flat water-based products on all my surfaces except the top. Some were sprayed, some were brushed. I honestly didn't keep track because this is the boring stuff, so let's get to some shiny hardware. While I reattach these doors, I want to take a second to thank you all for being here. If you're taking part in this challenge, I'm going to try my best to watch everyone's videos today. If you're here and chatting during the premiere, yay! I love yapping with all of you this early on a Saturday morning, coffee in hand, of course. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and comment below. Subscribe too if you enjoyed my unhinged quips and puns. Don't forget to watch the entire playlist. I'll have it linked at the end of this video and in the description read more area below. Stick around because the final reveal is coming right up, but that's all the work I have to share, so later beaches!